Україні, пан Х'юг Мінгареллі. Будь ласка, вам слово.
Thank you, and I'm very glad to be able to participate in this discussion. The Deputy Prime Minister has already described in detail the content, the scope of the Ukraine-EU relation, and I will just touch upon a few issues which have to be tackled if we want to further the rapprochement between the European Union and Ukraine. To start with, I fully agree that a lot has been achieved over the last 3 years, and I share the views of those who consider that Ukraine has done far more in terms of political and economic reforms over the last 3 years that between 1992 and 2014. There is no doubt about that. It's a fact. This is a starting point. Second point, the integration of Ukraine into the European Union today is not on the agenda. Our objective, the objective of the association agreement, is the political association and the economic integration, but in no way the integration of Ukraine into the EU. And I insist on that because when you introduced the debate, you said we have now got the association agreement, the visa-free regime. What is the name of the next objective? The next objective should be to implement these two agreements, because the signature and the ratification does not mean anything for the average Ukrainian citizen. And we have today to translate this association agreement and this visa-free regime into the concrete life of the Ukrainian citizens. And for that, a lot of work has to be done. Having said that, I'm not telling you that Ukraine will never join the EU. Article 49 of the EU Treaty clearly states that any European country which fulfills a number of criteria related to fundamental freedoms, human rights, rule of law, can apply to the EU. And Ukraine is, without any doubt, a European country. I'm just telling you that today, our daily work should not be focused about promoting Ukraine integration in the EU, because this is not on our agenda. It should be to deepen the political association and to promote the economic integration of the Ukrainian economy in the EU single market. And this is on our agenda, and this is the most important thing that the EU can offer Ukraine today, if we want to dispel illusions. What does this mean? Integrating the Ukrainian economy in the EU single market means that we have to get rid, to remove all tariffs and non-tariff barriers which today exist in trade and investment between the EU and Ukraine. Tariff barriers, this is not a major issue. For all countries which are WTO member, and this is the case of Ukraine, customs duty are not that high, are not the main obstacle to trade and investment. The main obstacles are the non-tariff barriers, the technical barrier to trade. And for that, we have to harmonize the Ukrainian legislation with the EU one. Ukraine has to take over the thousands of EU laws, norms and standards in all sectors of the economy, not only the trade-related barriers, but barriers as well in areas such as intellectual property right, state aid, competition law, in all these areas which are linked one way or another to our trade regime. This will take years. If we are optimistic, we say it will take between 6 and 7 years. If we are realistic, and in the light of what we have been doing over the last 25 years with the countries of Central Europe, it will take even more than that. Ukraine has a lot of assets to do that. An extremely qualified human resources. There is no doubt that if you look at the people in the various ministries and you compare these people with the people we had to deal with in other countries in which we have been carrying out this exercise, in Ukraine you have a highly qualified people. This does not mean that we should not try to improve the capacity of the state administration, and we are doing that through our support to the reform of the public administration. But again, the people we have today in front of us are extremely qualified, and therefore this is an asset. We all know what the main obstacle is. The main obstacle is vested interests. I am working on a daily basis with the Deputy Prime Minister, with Maria Ionova, to ensure that we remove step by step all obstacles to the harmonization of legislation, but we face constantly obstacles. Most of these obstacles are not related to a limited administrative capacity, but to the so-called vested interests, which have shaped the society, economy, and political life of Ukraine for 22 years, between 1992 and 2014. And it will take time and a strong political will and tenacity to remove progressively these vested interests. When we look at the reason why we are late, as the Deputy Prime Minister said, in the implementation of our DCFTA, we see that in most cases, draft laws which have been prepared in the line ministries are stuck for 6 months, 1 year, more than 1 year in Rada committees. And when I go to obviously, this has nothing to do with the Committee for European Integration, where we have committed reformers and competent people, and Maria will explain all that later on, but in a number of technical committees of the Rada, the draft laws are stuck because this draft law would basically put into question vested interest. And when I go to talk with the chairpersons of this committee, and this is the bulk of my work here, I realize that once again, this law on customs, which has been put on the table of the Rada more than 1 year ago, has been there for more than 1 year ago, because if this law is passed, a number of vested interests will be undermined. Again, this is not exceptional, and we should not be surprised and even less scandalized by this. It is like that in all transition processes. Transition processes are never linear, and they are never quick. In Ukraine, as I said, there are a number of assets which play in favor of a quick transition process, the competency of our interlocutors, but we have as well a terrible legacy, not only the legacy of the Soviet Union, but the legacy of what happened in this country between 1992 and 2014. So we have to be patient. We should not be naive and believe that overnight we will remove all these obstacles. We should wait. We should work on a daily basis with the many reformers we have in front of us in Ukraine to progressively remove the obstacle that, to protect their vested interest, a limited number of people in Ukraine managed to do to put today on our path. So, implementation of the DCFTA is the most important thing on our agenda today. We have to work on this on a daily basis because the way the Ukrainian economy belongs to the EU single market, it's done. It's done. This is the most important thing that the EU can offer you today, not other things that I will not mention because I cannot. Second point, we have as well to make sure that an increasing number of EU citizens know what Ukraine is about, because today this is not the case. Ukraine is well known in Slovakia, in Poland, in the Baltic states. But when it comes to Western Europe, and I will not mention these countries that I know well, I can tell you that Ukraine is not known at all. And nobody makes a difference between Ukraine, Tajikistan, Moldova, with full respect for Moldova and Tajikistan, don't get me wrong. But still, Western Europe has to discover that Ukraine is a country of more than 40 million people at the center of the European continent, with extremely qualified people. I keep saying that there are more people who speak foreign languages here than in many Western European countries that I know well. Look, you speak far better English than I do. This is a clear evidence and demonstration about what I am telling you. So, no, I'm not joking, but you have to do something in order for Western Europe to know what Ukraine is about and to understand that the rapprochement between Ukraine and the EU is not a threat for the EU, but a chance for the EU. I'm not able to tell you what you should do. I'm not a communication person. I'm just a bureaucrat, but you have to do something. And those who are able to think in communication terms has to work on that. As a bureaucrat, I believe that you should do more to exploit the many exchange programs that the EU put at the disposal of Ukraine. The exchange program for students, Erasmus+, you should do more. The exchange program for researchers, we are in a country which is producing missile, plane, and this kind of stuff. So Ukraine should be one of the main participants to Horizon 2020, which is the biggest research program in the world. You are already doing a lot, but far more should be done, Ivana and Maria. Try to mobilize your colleagues so that more Ukrainian academics and researchers participate in Horizon 2020. You have a lot to gain. Another area where far more should be done, cultural program. I keep telling my Ukrainian interlocutors that in a country like Tunisia, with 10 million people, we use every year 6 million euros to finance joint cultural programs between Tunisia and the EU. In Ukraine, almost nothing. When I arrived here 9 months ago, I discovered that we do not do almost anything in the cultural field. When you have a vibrant cultural activity, cultural community with every week new exhibitions, every week film festivals, a lot of creative industries, try to do something in Ivana and Maria in order for your country to benefit from the Creative Europe program. You have a poor lady who's a creative desk. She has no means, she is desperate. The first one resigned after a few months in this job. The second one, after a few weeks, is desperate. Do something. I know that you cannot allocate more to your culture ministry because you have a war on your territory and therefore you have other priorities, but something should be done to promote cultural activities, join cultural programs, and you should do your best to better exploit the many cultural EU programs which today are are at your disposal. We should as well, obviously, if we want to promote the rapprochement between Ukraine and the EU, talk about the war that is on your territory, because it's clear that this war is a major obstacle, politically and economically, to the rapprochement between Ukraine and the EU. The EU is doing what it is doing up to now, namely we fund the OSCE activities, in particular the Special Monitoring Mission. We fund a number of programs to help the reintegration of IDPs in the Ukrainian society. Currently, we are preparing a new program worth 50 million euro to help the reintegration of IDPs in the Ukrainian society. So we are doing already that. We are supporting politically the so-called Normandy format negotiation, but we know that over the last year, but for me the most important thing is that nothing should be done to further cut off the link between the Donbass and mainland Ukraine. On the contrary, we should have a strategic approach to these conflicts under which we favor an inclusive approach towards the Ukrainian citizens which today are living in the areas occupied by Russia and run by the so-called separatists. I have nothing specific to propose on this, but I have the strong feeling that everything which contributes to cutting off further the Donbass and Ukraine goes in the wrong direction. And in this field, I have a lot of doubts about the blockade which has been introduced a few months ago now. I know that the Ukrainian authorities had to react one way or another to what the Russian and the separatists did a few weeks before, namely the expropriation of 43 Ukrainian companies, the recognition of travel documents by Russia, the extension of the role of the ruble in the Lugansk Oblast. I know that you had to react to this, but still I don't think that creating additional obstacle to the movement of people and goods across the contact line was the right thing to do. So we have to reflect on that, because the current situation is an obstacle to the rapprochement between the EU and Ukraine. And this is why, by the way, your big neighbor will continue to be extremely active on this file, because they know that the best way to prevent the rapprochement of your country with the EU is to keep some kind of conflict on your territory. Last point, I think that it would be important for all those who try to promote this rapprochement to reflect on the best way to promote the renewal of the political class. I am a bit not disappointed, but I don't feel comfortable when I look at the opinion polls who say that if tomorrow, for any reason, there would be elections and the current leadership would not manage to remain in place, the people who would take their place are people that we have seen in power over the last 20 years in Ukraine. This would be obviously a disaster. And we have to reflect on how to make sure that people like you tomorrow could effectively be in power if, for any reason, there is a need to replace the current political leadership. How to do so, I don't know, but I'm sure that here you have as well an unbelievable asset in this country. When I meet the young representative of the political class and the people of the civil society, I say that no neighboring countries of the EU have such a vibrant young political class. If we could ensure that this young political class would be in a position to take over in the next few years, again, there would be no longer any need to have this kind of discussion and debate. I stop here. Thanks.